Nik Sobic is the Vice President of Business Operations with All Elite Wrestling, AEW, and Fight for the Fallen is AEW's next big show on Saturday, July 13th at Daly's Place Amphitheater in Jacksonville. The event's proceeds will go toward victims of gun violence. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so what does the Vice President of Business Operations for AEW do?
Great question. The Vice President of Business Operations for AEW right now does a little bit of everything, but I would say that about every single person at AEW right now. So when we launched earlier this year in January, obviously one of our big initiatives was getting the best talent available. So happy to be a part of that and happy to be really actively involved with that part of it. But I mean, we're a startup company, and for anyone that knows anything about the startup world, at this point, everybody has the opportunity, privilege of wearing a bunch of different hats, and anything from what's been really fun lately is starting to plan our national tour to specifics on show day, to we're a real company too, in the sense that we have a finance department and a marketing department and a corporate partnerships department. So the short answer is a little bit of everything.
I think that's interesting too, because we read and hear so much about the talent and those involved with AEW, such as Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, more of the wrestling and the wrestling side of it. But there's also a staff, a group in place that's per se non-wrestlers that are involved with AEW.
Well, so Jim, first of all, I think by design, our fans want to hear about our wrestlers because it's certainly way more interesting than what I do at my desk during the day. But one thing I will say is our wrestlers are also fantastic business men and women. So what some people know, I'm not sure everyone knows this, but Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, in addition to being superstar performers, also have desk jobs with AEW, and I have absolutely no idea how they manage their days or their schedules to be as productive as they are, but they've been fantastic.
You mentioned about a national tour. When you're looking at different places, what do you all take into account as to where AEW may perform, do a show?
Well, so we have a wonderful, wide-ranging, geographically diverse fan base. We also have internally, we have a great data and analytics team, and we're combining multiple sources of data to plan our tour around where we can have the biggest impact on the most number of fans. So ideally, we would like to be all over the country. We will be playing a different venue or arena every week, and the idea of a national tour is to cover as much of the country as possible.
And Nick, I know this is so early in the game, but down the road then is touring internationally, doing some shows overseas, part of the big picture?
Well, what's really great about working for the Khan family and with the Khan family is there's a precedent already with other businesses that they own and operate. For example, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville Jaguars are one of those NFL teams that have made a commitment on an annual basis to play at least one NFL game in London. So it's absolutely in the Khan family's pedigree to not only own and operate, entertainment businesses domestically, but I do not think it's too far of a stretch to consider that in the very near future, actually, probably seriously considering international events and that becoming sort of standard as part of our tour.
And you, Nick, you're also working with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Can you give a little background on working with the Jaguars and what you're doing with them?
to AEW, a little bit of everything. The entire Khan family. So Mr. Khan Shad has been great to work with, but he also has two kids. His kids are Tony Khan and Shauna Khan, and what I would say is chip off the old block from a sense that both his kids have that same entrepreneurial spirit. So, one of my roles and responsibilities and one of the favorite parts of my job is supporting the entire family, but more specifically, Tony and his sister in their entrepreneurial endeavors, one of which, and a substantial one, is AEW.
When you're looking at the overall with the whole entrepreneurship, what do you think about the pro wrestling venture and your involvement with that from a business standpoint? Well, and as an entertainment standpoint as well, I guess.
Everything that we look at in terms of opportunities in really any field, entertainment or finance or tech or whatever, has a business case. And, I don't think that we would have necessarily pursued the AEW venture without a strong business case supporting it, before choosing to pave that road. So what I would say is that we are so thrilled to have been validated, and by validated I just mean very early on with some of the success AEW has had, because some of the core principles, that eventually tipped the scales in favor of we're going to do this, we're going to support it, we're going to make it work, and it's going to be awesome. Our biggest number one, business point is who are our fans? Would they support this product? How do we build an entire company around the idea of every day when we wake up, our initiative is to support this fan base? So it was very much a leap of faith on the business side, but equally a leap of faith for our fans to have come out and support us the way that we thought they might. And what I will say is we had really, really optimistic ideas on what AEW fans would look like and how many there would be and how they would support us. But even our wildest, most optimistic projections for who is this fan base that we're trying to reach, we're blown away every day by the early success and the amount of people that are out there that are supporting us and the ways that they're supporting us. So, for example, two of our big shows, we call them cornerstones internally, the one that we had in Vegas, Double or Nothing, and the one that's coming up in Chicago, All Out. Both of those shows sold out in less than 15 minutes. And what's interesting about it is, those markets, there are great wrestling fans in those markets, but people are traveling from all over the world to go to those shows. Actually, a higher percentage of people from around the world are traveling to go to those shows than people who are coming from local markets. What that says to me is there are families and there are fans out there that are making really significant financial sacrifices to support AEW and to support what we're doing. And that's heartwarming is probably the first way that I could describe that. I mean, that's so special that people are supportive in that way.
When you look at that and see how quickly it sells and people traveling from all over, do you look now, or is it too early to say, hey, maybe we should start looking at bigger venues?
Yeah, I mean, we are, to an earlier point, our biggest driving factor behind a lot of the decisions we make is making sure that the fans that come to the show and they travel so far and make so many sacrifices to be there, is that are we 100% sure that this is going to be a great show? And I guess what that means is there's some venues early that we've had relationships with already. There are places that we want to play and buildings that we know well that we can execute at a very, very high level. And a good example of that, our next show in Jacksonville on July 13th, and we know everything it's going to take to really put on a fantastic show and fantastic experience. So early on, we haven't necessarily been driven by the size of the arena. It's more how confident are we that people that are going to be at the show are going to have a really, really good time. So in the future, as we become more sophisticated and we plan a weekly national tour, the venue size statistics and analytical research will be in place to help inform our decision on, how big these venues should be and what the demand is.
Yeah, especially for those two bigger shows, like you said earlier, that those could be, because they're also marquee shows, those could be an opportunity to investigate the process of maybe holding it at a bigger venue since, geez, those things sold out so fast. It's just amazing, and there were so many people that wanted to still attend. I'm wondering, Nick, the process of AEW, was it something just to get it all started and formed and everybody together? Was it fair to say it was a year process, longer than a year process? I was always curious how long a process it took just to get it off the ground.
A lot of companies have founders or leaders that do a job, and what's different about AEW is Tony Khan, who founded the company, is not only the founder and owner, but he's also a fan of the product, and I think that's so special and so different. And he's businessman, but he's also a huge wrestling fan, and that's what I think sets AEW apart from other brands. That's what gives AEW a chance to be successful, because there's someone leading the creative process behind the scenes that wants the best for the wrestling world.
Well, yeah, I know, but in that, the process itself, do you know how long it took to get this thing going? Or is that something just...
Sorry. I guess what I meant by my answer, explaining how Tony is such a huge wrestling fan, and the process, this idea, I know has been in his head for way more than a year, as long as I've known him, which is 5 years. So in terms of process, how long have we been planning this? I know he's been thinking about it for more than 5 years. In terms of the formal planning process, from our official launch earlier this year in January, I would say that we've ramped up really significantly in our planning, probably 6 months prior to our launch.
Now, Nick, your background also includes employment with Wells Fargo, and also you have a football background.
I do. So I played in college, my college football at Harvard. Immediately after graduating, I had an opportunity to sign a free agent contract with the New Orleans Saints in 2007. Interesting sort of backstory is, actually my offensive line coach at the time in 2007 at the New Orleans Saints was Doug Marrone, who is now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars many years later. So it's been really awesome to reconnect with him on a personal level many years later. But yeah, so after my brief athletic career, I had to go out and get a real job, and luckily my background from Harvard was economics and finance, and had a really great 7-year career at Wells Fargo, and honestly probably didn't really think about leaving until I had the opportunity to sort of meet with the Khan family and meet with the front office of the Jacksonville Jaguars. As you can imagine, they're just like a really convincing group of people, and really hard to say no to, and have been with them ever since for the last 5 years, and really haven't looked back.
And you also did a little bit of playing with the CFL Toronto Argonauts?
Correct. I actually lived, so when I was with the Saints, I lived in New Orleans, and then when I went to Toronto, I lived in a suburb, Mississauga, and it was just a great experience. great for me to have an office literally in the stadium where the Jacksonville Jaguars play, because I can be close to a sport that I love in a very different way.
And that's great too, because not only did you get to participate in something you love, but you're still involved in something that you love.
Oh yeah, every day. And this is, while we're sort of on the topic of Jacksonville Jaguars, Jaguar Stadium, and what I will say is one thing that's really unique about All Elite Wrestling is, and that being a part of the Khan family enterprises, is that we have this amazing backbone at the Jaguars. We have some of the best. We have one of the best marketing teams in the world. We have one of the best sponsorship departments in the world. We have some of the best, HR in the world. And can you imagine a startup of this magnitude without that? So just having the Jacksonville Jaguars in your back pocket as your sister company anytime you need help from some of the best in the world has been a really sort of undervalued blessing for AEW. And I think probably one of the reasons why a company can come out of sort of nowhere and be operating at a pretty impressive sort of clean level in such a short amount of time.
Do you find in doing the work for AEW that there are parallels between pro football and pro wrestling?
A lot actually. Yeah, we're actually on a daily basis looking at our fan base and data from a lot of different angles, but one of the projects we're kind of working on right now, because we're curious, but also there's some potential opportunity, what the overlap looks like. What if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan or you're an NFL fan, are you also a wrestling fan? There's a ton of overlap. There's some unique maybe co-branding ideas and opportunities that we may explore in the future, but in terms of who our fan is at AEW versus who our fan is as part of the Jacksonville Jaguars organization, they look a lot alike.
And in that realm, do you also see that the Jaguars and AEW will be combining together for events, football-related events, tying it in with AEW, AEW tying it in with the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah, we support each other very much so from a front office perspective at this point. And, one of the things that I don't think anyone will ever say about, the Khan family is that they're not willing to be innovative or that they're not willing to be cutting edge or to try something new. So lots of ideas in terms of which ones materialize, I'm not sure, but definitely some in terms of a soft start to test the market a little bit. Plenty of social media opportunities in terms of Jaguars influencers, Jaguars players who are also AEW fans, and AEW stars and people who work there who are also Jaguars fans. We've already done some stuff, but I think that there's plenty of opportunity in the future to continue to explore that.
It seems like many athletes and celebrities are very into pro wrestling, have been for a long time, and then you see athletes getting involved in becoming pro wrestling. And I was just curious if you ever had any interest in becoming a pro wrestler.
Me personally, do I have any interest? Of course, but what I've quickly learned about our talent is they're so good in so many different areas. As an NFL football player, you do have to be a well-rounded individual, but ultimately what it comes down to is performing your sport on game day and being a great athlete. What's the differentiating factor between a football athlete and a wrestling athlete is you not only in the wrestling ring have to be a world-class athlete, but you also have to be a world-class performer. And that is such a rare combination of skills, and I've come to appreciate that probably more than anything in my 6 months at AEW. So the short answer is I think there are a lot of people that would love to be pro wrestlers, but I'm realistic about how unique that skill set is and where my limitations may be there.